Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of our Fractional CMO Marketing Leadership and 100 Days and Beyond podcast, where we talk to, I would say, the fraternity that's paid its dues, that's done the hard yards, I think, in life, and actually done the hard work in terms of building not only businesses, but also their own internal or personal skill sets, their emotional, physical, and mental states, and actually going through multiple changes in this wonderful world that we live in. If I just recount in the last year what we've actually go through, and we've just gone through another weekend of something completely different again. It's like this whole world has gone unbelievably. I think just the amount of things happening. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm seeing a multitude of things. Oliver, welcome to our podcast today, and I really appreciate you joining us. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Welcome.
Hi, Dudley. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Great to be in, and it's great for you to join. So Oliver, look, I think, from a guy with your background and your understanding of the world as it is, and being an actual leader within the space that you're in, I thought, instead of me, what I normally do is I normally sort of go into the LinkedIn profile and so on and so forth. And I think today I'm going to sort of mix it up a bit. I'm going to say, look, Oliver, give us your view, give us your understanding. Like, how did you get to where you are right now? And let's kickstart it like that, and we'll take it from there.
So, Dudley, the podcast must be done a lot longer than we anticipated. Yeah, if you want to hear all of that story. No, well, I think it's a good question, because in what you see in hindsight is probably something you wouldn't have been able to plan. And I guess where it all sums up for me is a generic curiosity of new things, of things that I didn't understand. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know. And if you follow this lead, then you inevitably get to a point where you accumulate a lot of things in life. And at some point in time, then you can really take stock and say, actually, I have so many things now learned and in my backpack, for a better word, yeah. And what do I do with it? Yeah, and that leads then to a point where you maybe also find that you're a bit a jack of all trade, and you know a lot of things, but nothing well enough to do something in that particular space. Yeah, and the key moment is probably then when you meet people that complement your skills, that add something to what you have, or you add something to what they have, and then suddenly you can build something with it. And that exactly happened to me. I mean, I've been, without going through the LinkedIn profile, yeah, in detail. I started as a plumber many moons ago. Yeah, went to university, started as an engineer in one of the big blue chip companies in the world, in Siemens. After a few years, I realized, actually, engineer is fantastic, but if you don't understand financials, you don't know why you're doing things every day. So I changed to the financial side, realized I need to understand marketing and sales better, and moved to that side, and on and on and on. Changed industries from communications to IT solutions and services to healthcare, and ended up with a massive tool set there, and wondered really what I do with it. Yeah, and the first natural reaction, what most people do, is I become a consultant. Yeah, so everyone wants to be a consultant and consult in everything, but there are millions of consultants around. So to differentiate is very difficult. But over this journey, I found people that were kicking an idea around, which was probably from a very early days something I had in the back of my mind as something that's very interesting. And this is, as boring as it sounds, receivables management. Yeah, it started probably with a friend who had a startup about 40 years ago, 35 years ago, and I helped him a little bit in the back office and realized actually people are not paying their bills, yeah, and this is easy money to gain. And I chased the bills and got the process set up, and anyway, and that was also following me in Siemens, yeah, becoming a few times cash champion in Siemens by being absolutely focused on this area. And this was a topic that suddenly popped up after my career in Siemens. And when I met these few guys that were kicking an idea around of actually, this problem is a massive problem in the SME space. Yeah, small businesses have this every day, and they don't have the means and the expertise blue chip companies have to address this. And I thought, actually, well, that is fantastic. I love it. Yeah, and that was the moment when the next chapter opened up, and that's where we are now.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, from plumbing to marketing to engineering to
Yes.
what a wonderful toolkit. And I think each one influences the other, and as you build your toolkit, as you call it, it just expands and gives you the ability to cope with things. I mean, engineers are probably more structured in their thinking. Marketing people are probably theoretically more creative, if you like. But these days, you need almost an engineering degree to do proper marketing as well. And
Yes.
you probably need, in terms of the systems and things you use from an engineering perspective, you need probably software, and then you also need the people skills, because I see your skill set is incredibly diverse, and that's why I wanted you on online today, because I think this space that you ended up in terms of collecting money and so on is a service of obviously that needed to be created. But you've gone through a journey of setting this lot up, because I'm sure there have been things that have happened along the way that that potentially could have been a stumbling block, could have been issues that stood up and have been let's call it challenges. I mean, tell us a little bit about some of the sort of steps you had to go through from, I mean, coming from a very structured organization. I mean, Siemens as a company, I mean, from the outside, it looks like a very well-oiled machine. There's structures, there's processes. I'm sure there's standard operational procedures for everything.
And that's true.
And everything is sort of, it's black or white. That's it. There's no coloring between the lines. And then getting into an entrepreneurial world, that transition must have been interesting. And then also just going through the stages of startup all the way through to where you are now. Give us a little bit about that journey of how you experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, I think your suspicion there, that you probably don't have the I call it the flexibility you need to be in a startup space. Yeah, it's probably not a bad thought. Yeah, because this is something that kept me awake at the very beginning. Because if you're trained to do everything 100% perfect before you move, and maybe have a few others checking your homework first, then suddenly to get to a point where you say 80% is good enough, go on. It's an uncomfortable move. Yeah, and I think the only thing I would say probably is because I have in the 30 years in Siemens being in a lot of change. Yeah, so I have a restructured company, we have bought companies, we have laid off companies, and I was in the middle of that. And you in this particular environment, you need the same skill set. You can't do 100% due diligence before a company is being bought because somebody else would have bought it. Yeah, you can't analyze every problem to the latest little bit before you start solving it, because if you have 100 problems on your plate, you have to do it. And this is something I've done many times in my life. And the question was probably more, how can you apply the same thing here? Yeah, and but to be honest with you, I fell in this trap. Yeah, I fell in this trap when we started analyzing whether this business opportunity is a true business opportunity or just a pipe dream. Yeah, we started with competitive analysis, market analysis, all the good stuff you do. Yeah, product development plan. What would it be our customers might like, and all this stuff. Yeah, and at some point in time, a friend of mine said to me, "I'll tell you what, Oliver, you're running in danger of being 15 months pregnant." Yeah, and that was a bit of a wake up call for me when I said, actually, he's probably right. Yeah, he's right. Yeah. And then there's always the question, actually, are you confident enough to say that, oh, I have enough in my tool, I move on, and if I made a mistake, I need to correct. Yeah. And that started, and we realized, and I realized that actually that works quite well for me. Yeah, this is not something I have to be worried about. I have no sleepless nights about it. So it's more the question, actually, okay, it's not a disaster if you make a mistake. Yeah, you need to correct it. The only difference to my previous life is it's my own money that's in play. Yeah, so I tell you, you're more focused with that. You probably know this as well from your perspective. You're more focused if it's your own money. Yeah, so that was probably a big step. Yeah, the other thing is probably, I touched on it earlier on, that if you do something like that, and as much as I think I have a broad tool set to be a business person, you also have to accept and understand where the limitations are. Yeah, so I worked, for example, many years in the IT environment, but I'm not an IT expert, and I, by no stretch of imagination, somebody who could lead the IT aspects of our business. Yeah. But when I met my business partner, Herman, I realized actually here is the guy who brings this to the table. And together, I have the business side probably more. I'm not saying he doesn't have. He has it probably to some degree, but not as much as I have. And I have some IT skills, but not the IT skills he has. And that was a very compatible package. Yeah. And that helped us also being confident enough to say we move on, and we put our own money in the business. So we have no investor at the moment. Yeah, we have done everything ourselves, and we're proud of it. Yeah, and so that basically is another big aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm loving that, and I want to sort of extend that a bit, and because one of the things that when we had our first quick chat was how do you choose the right partner? Because there's this, and it's cliche, or I don't know, some people call it, but they say a partnership is a ship that's never meant to sail, and you get this place where partnerships sort of, it sounds like a good idea, and you get your mates or whatever involved, and when you look again, you no longer have a friend, nor do you have a business or whatever it is, or you've lost all your money. But tell us, how do you make a partnership? How do you first select? How do you know? Yes, you spoke about the strengths coming together, but there are also things like frictions, and I'm sure there are things like discussions and things you have to have that sometimes are uncomfortable. How do you make a partnership work? It's a bit like a marriage to a great extent, isn't it? But
yes, it
tell
is.
us a bit about that partnership mentality, like all the way from the beginning, because you're not always sure whether, firstly, it's business. You're not sure whether you should go into business. But second is, should I do this myself, or should I take on someone else that could potentially share the burden, but it comes with its innate sort of risks, if you like. Tell us a bit about that.
It's absolutely key what you're saying, and it's even worse than what you said, because due to the pandemic, the things we have done for decades, of meeting people and sussing them out, reading the body language and all this stuff wasn't possible, because we couldn't meet, so we had to start a partnership without having personally met, so just on screen, and that is an additional challenge. I guess what I think, what it comes down to, everyone has to basically investigate him or herself and try to find out actually how good am I in judging people. Because if you look back for 30 years and say, actually, in the main, when I met people, it was a disaster. And I had to find out later, actually, that was not working. And I had to fix a lot of problems afterwards. Then maybe in such an environment is a bad idea to do this. But if you are lucky, like me, where I say the majority of people, and of course not everyone, yeah, that would be a total lie, yeah, but in the majority, I felt that I'm quite good in finding out whether I can work with people or not. Yeah, and that is the first step. The second step is when you start working with people, you soon find out whether there are some different values in play between the different players. And if you have different values, it's like you said, it's a bit like a marriage. It's the same in a marriage at home. Yeah, if you have different values, I can assure you it won't work. Yeah, and the same is in business as well. If you feel certain things like say for example a structured approach before you make a decision. If you think about honesty, if you have concerns, if you find truthfulness an important thing, if things go wrong, and if the other partner doesn't have it, then I think that's the moment to step back. Yeah, and in all fairness, in the early days of our venture, we had such a situation. Yeah, and we were initially a few more people, and all with fantastic skills. And I'm not saying they're bad people, but probably not compatible with what Herman and I feel is required to work together. And there was a point where I had said, actually, look, guys, I was the last one joining here, so I have no right to demand anything. So I'm out. That's not for me. I have dealt in 30 years, because I had to in Siemens, not only with people I love to work with, but also with people I had to work with. And I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of doing my own business. Otherwise, I could hire somewhere else again, probably would earn a lot more money, at least at this stage. Yeah. But I want to do something with people I trust, I like working with, where I know that the majority of ideas and values are the same. And that was the second point, really, where I felt actually with the business partner I have now, that is working extremely well. Yeah. And that was confirmed, and also when we finally met in person, yeah, that I think he's a great guy, and we're getting on quite well with each other. But these two things, yeah, there's be truthful to yourself and wonder, are you good with people? Are you not? Yeah, and be honest with yourself. Yeah, because it's you can lie to everyone, but you can't lie to yourself. Yeah, so be honest with yourself and talk to yourself about it. And then also take consequences if you feel actually it's not working.
Yeah, I want to ask then. Look, you've started. You were in Siemens for the 30 odd years, and then you now go into your own business, and you have to go out there and you got to start selling your services. You got to start speaking to people, generate clients. Now customer selection. Now we spoke about partner selection, but selecting the right customer in the early days is relatively difficult, because you've got this conflict between I need clients, I need customers, but I also need to make sure that I select the right people to work with, because in effect, in your business, being in the nature of your business, if you like, is one where you have to maintain good, strong relationships, and people have to be able to trust you to do the part that they're potentially not able to get to. But you got to be able to select the right kind of customer to go on a journey with, because you don't do one-off sales. I mean, you do longer term agreements. Tell me about sort of the first sort of customers, and then how you've actually matured that model, because we are talking about marketing leadership, and sort of business development, if you like. Give us a bit of your take on on
Yeah,
that?
I think there's is probably one aspect which is probably a little bit more difficult than what you think, and there's something that is a little bit easier than you think. Yeah? So the more difficult one is that approaching one customer directly is a very I wouldn't say difficult thing, but it doesn't get us very far because there are 6 million SMEs in the UK. Yeah. So for a start, you can't speak to every one of them. Yeah. You can speak to a few. And if you speak to a few, they will have exactly the problem we are solving for them, but they don't have hundreds of these problems. They have maybe half a dozen or a dozen of these problems, yeah, unpaid invoices. So we can help them with that, but they might not have anything for the next 2 months. Yeah. So the individual customer relationship is not getting us very far. Having said that, you need many of those. And the risk is if you don't pick the right one, if you don't treat them correctly, then the word will spread that your company is no good. Yeah. So therefore, you have to make sure that you understand the customer's needs first before you approach them, and that's the key. Yeah. So it's not, I know, Dudley, you have a problem. You have a customer who doesn't pay you. I solve this for you. No, I need to make another step and say, what is Dudley's concern if I want to help him and solve this invoice? Will he lose this customer as a result of this project or this support? Will he feel actually, yes, I got some of my money, but I got only half of it? Or actually this problem disappeared in a big hole and I never saw this guy again, and then suddenly a year later he told me it's paid. So no, you need to come up front and say, look, first of all, we do this in an ethical way. Yeah, so we are people that work with reputable companies that cherish your customer relationship. Your customer relationship is as valuable to us as it is to you, because if you tell later on, actually, they got me the money, but my customer is gone, this doesn't help anyone. So we want you to keep your customer. So we're thinking about your problem and your concerns and explaining to you, first of all, that is important to us and that we will work on cherishing that. Yeah. So this is how this works. So you go around and of course you speak initially what you do in your network to people and find people that are open to work with you. First, just to test what your product looks like, and then obviously going into true business with you. And you talk about their concerns openly with them. And if this clicks, then you have the right people. Yeah. So on the other hand, we're also not interested in being used as cowboys to bring money in, and then our reputation is wrecked and maybe the client is happy. Yeah, that has to be a mutual positive thing, and only then it really works.
Yeah, and I imagine working with SMEs is, that they don't have 10,000 clients or customers. So, they have a much smaller number. So losing one or two customers because there's an issue on an invoice or on some work that was supposed to be delivered and there's a dispute, or I don't know, whatever the reason is, you almost got to help your client bolster their relationship with the person you're collecting the money from, but at the same time collecting the money without upsetting anybody. So, and do that at scale. And so that's why I thought it'd be a fascinating conversation, because you're managing to overcome the ability to take what is essentially individual personal relationships of SMEs with their clients, but do that at a more and more of a scaled way. And it's for me, those two are quite difficult to take it. It's easy enough to have maybe 20 SMEs to work with, and then you're doing a few invoices a month. But if you get 200 or 2,000 or 20,000 SMEs to start working with, all of a sudden, there's a different scale we're talking about. And Now you got to be able to put in repeatable processes, and you got to be able to build it from there, but still maintain that personalization that you had initially. So, I mean, that's an interesting journey. What's your comments around that?
Yeah, I mean, you probably have the same dimensions in any business that have to be in sync to make the business work. Yeah, so you have the structure of the business, the process of the business, the people, and maybe the support, if you want, as a dimension, like in IT support and this kind of stuff. Yeah, and if you have a good structure in your company, if you have good processes in your company, and if you have good people, then the business starts surfing. Yeah, if you have a problem with one of the three, so for the sake of our discussion, you don't have the right people, you need to overcompensate this shortcoming with more structure and more process. Yeah, so if we transfer this into our model, how do we do this if we can't be sure about this people relationship because it's just too many? Yeah, the only thing we can do is we overcompensate this with structure and process, and this means we getting the right business partners in play that doing the collections for us. So we're not working with everyone. We're working with people that are here for decades, in some cases for a century already, that have been vetted and tested by bodies that basically rubber stamp the quality of these organizations. And in terms of the process, we have our own processes that ensure that we get the connection between our client and the data in place, and that this is a safe and secure environment. Yeah. Time will tell, yeah, whether we got this absolutely right. I'm pretty sure here and there it will need adjustments, but this is a fundamental start. So you cannot to go to the other extreme. You cannot work with just a collection agency and hope that they are right without looking at them and just having an email process in the middle and hope everything will right. That would be a cocktail for disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then also, I mean, I'm thinking having been in business for some time myself, and also working with different entities, often there could also be a symptomatic reason why there's a collection required. It could be a business problem that your client has that they're not fulfilling on certain obligations or certain parts of the contract, and therefore there's a dispute or something like that. It's not just that the person can't pay or is unwilling to pay. It's there's often an underlying issue or reason why. I mean, I'm just thinking from a marketing point of view. I mean, it's quite fascinating. You've spoken here about speaking to your client, making sure you understand what they really want. So this is your SME that needs to collect the invoices. Also being able to engage with the person that you're collecting from, or at least understanding what the issues are, because once you can unpack that, there are potentially things on both sides that could be fixed, probably client and your client and their client or customer. And then you start getting into systemic issues, because there could potentially always be disputes. So yes, it's one thing to keep going to collect money, but there could be a systemic, there could be something within their business that's an issue. So there are so many variables. So what's very interesting is that you actually go, number one, marketing rule number one is go and understand your customer, understand who they are, what their main issues are, and so on, and really truly understand that. And then number two is to start building up what you would know as well is the ideal customer profile. Sort of what does an ideal client or customer look like to us? Because it could be different to a different organization. So that's number two. It's like, who do I really target? That's number two. And then number three is, where do I find them? which is the other question we're probably going to get to, is as in you're doing networking, you're doing talking. During the pandemic, it was a lot more difficult to do any of those kind of things, to get in front of people. There's this proliferation of online meetings and so on. And like you said right at the beginning, you're talking about body language. We used to the face-to-face meetings, and all of a sudden it wasn't. So now how do you gauge whether you actually interacting or engaging your target, whoever you're talking to? So there's a number of core marketing and business development principles that you've already touched on. I want to sort of start unpacking that a little bit, because how do you deal with when there's a repeat problem, and it's not necessarily the customer of your customer's fault, it's your client or your customer's fault that things keep going wrong and people don't want to pay their accounts? How do you deal with that?
First of all, respect. You clearly made your homework before we started talking. Yeah? No, this is one of the key things, of course. Yeah. So these disputes are obviously a big chunk of the reason why people are not paying. Yeah? And as much as we are not focused on the areas where people are in dispute, because let's unpack dispute first. Yeah, there are two different types of disputes. One is the service or the product hasn't been delivered or in full or to the right quality. Yeah. So if you order a car and the car arrives without wheels, then clearly the job hasn't been finished. Yeah. So this is stuff we are not focusing on. Yeah. So we tell this our clients very well. This is not what we're here for. Yeah. But there's another dispute where people say, actually, I'm not paying because you misspelled my company name on the invoice, or I don't know, your invoice looks different to your order confirmation, or I had a different understanding of da 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 da. This kind of dispute we deal with, and we have business partners that are specialized on these areas. Some of our partners are saying, no, we're not doing that. We're just going for the pure financial non-payment. But we have some that are trained and focused on this area, and with the idea to bring a solution to the table. Yeah, not to just with all the legal tools we have to get the money, and a solution for both. Yeah? But the key issue, of course, is do we just want to focus on a problem that between you and me and everyone who's listening here shouldn't exist in the first place? Yeah, people should pay their bills. Yeah, if you saw my comments on the offices for small businesses this morning, yeah, the same situation we are dealing with in 30% of the cases is unimaginable if you're sitting in a restaurant. Yeah, if you go to a restaurant, you pay order a meal, get a fantastic meal for your family. At the end of the day, you will pay before you leave. You will not say, actually, I'm not interested in paying. I definitely pay later, but definitely not now, or maybe I don't pay at all. You would never have such a conversation. So why is it okay in business? Yeah. So, but it's true, isn't it? It's this behavioral issue. It's a behavioral issue. And one of the things we are doing as well, because we don't want to be just the ones that focusing on this awful problem that is there, we're also helping our customers to get their processes in order. And we have a whole list of things what need improving on our client side to avoid these situations. Say, for example, if you're a plumber and you say, actually, I built you a new bathroom, cost say 3K, and then while you're working there, the client says, actually, but I want to have also this done, that done, and that done. In the end, the bill is 4K. Then has the plumber issued a new order confirmation in between? Well, it would have been a prudent thing to do, because then there would be no dispute. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what they do is they say, oh, it was 3K and here's my invoice for 4K. Well, open season for not paying. Yeah. So these kind of things, or you have a big bill. What you do is you say, actually, hello Dudley, it's Oliver here. The bill is due end of the week. Is there anything that stops you paying me? By the way, I still like you. Yeah. So if you do that, you build a personal relationship to your customer, and the customer is more likely to pay you than to say, actually, I don't care about Dudley. Yeah. So yeah, that, so there's a lot of stuff we have and we offer to our clients to make their business better and prevent them from having disputes and so on. And for all the other stuff they can't solve, we are there to help. That's the approach. Yeah. Knowing it would be a wonderful world if this wouldn't happen in the first place and we would be out of business, but we know this will never happen. Yeah. So it's, for us, it's better marketing to help our clients to organize their business better, have less problems, and then telling the others who still have the problems that actually these guys are good, talk to them.
Yeah, so it's almost counterintuitive because you're a collection company, but you're helping your clients solve their collection problems, and therefore your work diminishes with your client in lieu of building a better reputation to get more clients. And I think your initial statement when we first started was, you know what, there's almost 6 million SMEs in the UK. So you can probably theoretically not run out of customers. That's
Exactly.
your business.
Yeah.
But it's better to help your client overcome things that they can quite easily overcome.
Yeah.
And your plumbing example is quite a good one. If you look in the UK, I think I saw a stat the other day. In the last 100 years, say 100 years ago, most people were employed or were in environments where product or things or manufacturing or mining and that sort of thing was done. Now we have many, many more service businesses. So let's say 90% 100 years ago were product-based engineering, that sort of thing. So it's goods and services like manufacturing and mining, and so stuff you can touch and feel. These days, I think that the stat is something like 16% of businesses actually make stuff in the UK, and the balance are service businesses. So service businesses are, you take your plumber example is a good one. And sometimes the client or the customer is just as guilty, because there are 3 words that I've got my own service businesses. We do accounting and other types of software implementations and e-commerce and so on. And there's this one thing that we always have to be training our staff and our people, especially salespeople and our staff, all the time is there's 3 words that are like absolute, like it's potential death for that relationship with the client. And that's the 3 words: can't you just? When the client says, can't you just add that for me? Can't you, while you are here, like, the plumber, while you are here, you've broken a hole in the wall for that pipe. Can't you just add another pipe, another tap?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'll do it, but remember, it's going to cost you extra. So now the plumber doesn't actually put the tools down and say, look, wait a minute, I'm going to write up a change order here and a change request, and you sign it, and we have an additional quote, and in addition to the original quote. They're not going to do that. They're going to be like, okay, I'll do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Technology, software installing and all that, it's even less tangible. How do you know a work was done? And I think your analogy earlier with a motor car, for instance, and I think a lot of software companies experience this, and I've seen court processes, not for myself, but for clients of mine, where they will create they'll get a brief for a software to be implemented, for instance. They'll fulfill on the brief the way they understood it. The client saw a different picture in their head, although they're seeing the same piece of paper, the same estimate or quote or whatever it is. But how do you determine whether what has been given has been totally delivered? You had an analogy about the car. You buy a motor car and the wheels didn't come with the car. Okay, so it's obvious there's parts that are missing. Now, when you install and implement software or do a service, there's a lot more gray, isn't there? I mean, it becomes
Absolutely.
a lot more difficult, and educating your client to handle their processes better, have a better engagement with clients, because I think, and I'm doing a lot of talking, and I want you to come back at me with this, is what I'm seeing is that it's not just about collecting the money. That's number one. Number two is, yes, it's behavioral in that. But number two is you want to keep the client. That's the first thing, at least keep the client. But number three is, how do you make sure that you get more business from the client and actually get that client so happy with you? And I'm not talking about your client, I'm talking about your customer's customer or your client's customer, that they are so happy with your client that they will then go and be an advocate. We talk about the star ratings these days. I mean, isn't it? You look at a 5-star rating or a 1-star, and you look at these reviews, and reputation management is becoming more and more prevalent, isn't it? So reputation management, people, you get these weird people on the internet. I mean, they're making all kinds of complaints and accusations about things sometimes they don't even know about, or they just had a small incident. I mean, let's say you go to McDonald's and someone's spilled coffee and you happen to slip, but the coffee was just spilled and nobody could clean it within that split second. Now it's McDonald's fault. Now you write a long so just come back to me about your experience around that, and I mean, so on, if you can.
First of all, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, with products, it's always a lot easier than just with services. Yeah, and it probably has to do with if you get a product, you have something in your hand, you see the value. Whereby with a service, I'm just worried you're frozen, that we're still okay.
Yes, we're fine.
Okay,
we're fine. We're fine. There's just something happening in the background. Yeah, go for it.
No worries. So with services, of course, it's a lot more difficult, as you said. Yeah, so it's difficult to measure, and I think the two things that spring to mind there. One is, if you have a good relationship with your customer, that is really, really important. And the second thing is that you give them something instead of the service dimensions. You don't say, actually, I wrote, I don't know, 300 lines of code, which doesn't mean anything to any client at all, unless he's an IT. But if you say to them, look, if I do this for you, this is probably a day's work at X pound the hour. Yeah. And then suddenly what wasn't tangible becomes tangible, and have this discussion up front. And even if it's not precise because you've been put on the spot there, you get an understanding. And with the relationship together, it's very unlikely that the client doesn't value this conversation in hindsight. Yeah, I mean, there are always people that they're always difficult, but let's not talk about the extreme cases. Let's talk about the majority of people. If I have somebody explaining to me what it's doing and what it means to me in my language, in my currency, and if I trust this person to some degree, it's very unlikely that I go back and challenge the guy on receiving the invoice. Yeah. So that comes back to explaining and the relationship properly, the two things. And this is nothing different to in blue chip companies. Yeah, when Siemens had issues with their customers, and it can be companies like Ford of Europe. Yeah, so also not a small fish. Yeah, but it's the same thing. You need a relationship to the people, to the opposite partner, and they need to understand why you're sending an invoice and why it is important that this invoice is also being paid on time. These kind of things, if this is established, if it's outspoken, and if you had the nod in the conversation from your opposite partner, it's less likely that there will be a problem further down the road.
Yeah, and I think it's all part of marketing leadership, and that's why this podcast and these types of podcasts are very real, very important to,
Mm.
especially for those SMEs and those companies and people that work in these environments, that it's not transactional. And in fact, the world has changed to such an extent that it's now become a lot more relational. It is definitely a lot more relational. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, with one of our companies, we had quite a few clients that at the start, I mean, I think the pandemic, the lockdowns were announced, I think, on the 20th of March or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on the 21st of March, the company got phone calls from all the customers saying, we can't pay. It's because there's lockdown.
Yeah.
It's like, we've just finished like 1, 2, 3 months of work. You had the money yesterday. Now you don't have the money. That just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it must have been quite interesting. I mean, in the pandemic, people not having the money, that's true
Mm-hmm.
as well, because businesses had to close down. There's also been issues around, I'm guessing, sort of concessions made to be able to keep like tenants in buildings and customers happy and so on. So there's been a lot more relational discussions, I'm guessing, in this space. Have you seen a behavior change in, let's say, the last few years, where we are today?
I mean, you don't even need to take my word for it. Yeah, if you look at the business index from Xero, the accounting package Xero, yeah, then you can read how the payment behavior has changed during the pandemic, and that it's a negative trend for quite a while. Yeah. So the more interesting thing probably is, why is that? Yeah. And I mean, there as you said, there are genuine businesses or people that are in genuine problems, and that is probably undeniable. Yeah. That is one aspect. The second aspect is also it's in many or it's in generally, it's probably in human nature that the majority of humans don't like uncertainty, and uncertainty pulls all brakes. Yeah. So there's a lockdown. This will be disaster. Yeah, my business won't survive. I will lose everything I have. My children can't go to school anymore. I will never go on holiday again, and this kind of thinking. Yeah? and I think this is actually human behavior, human nature, and we don't like change. A few of us have been trained that change is good, and it creates lots of opportunity. Yeah, and if you are one of them, then consider yourself lucky. Yeah, I'm one of them. I'm lucky. Yeah, but I also know that a lot of people are not like that. Yeah, and that creates such a behavior, and it comes again to the question of how do you address such behaviors, and the only thing I have seen being successful is talking to the clients, to the debtors, and explain to them what your issue is, and ask them what their issue is, and then finding a compromise. Yeah? So a lot of the solutions for larger issues in the debt collection industry ending up in a compromise, and the compromise doesn't mean I'll pay you less. The compromise is usually a payment plan. Yeah. So you struggle during the lockdown, have less income. So I tell you what, let's start with the collection in 6 months' time, and then we spread it over 12 months in equal chunks. Is that okay for you? Does it work for you? Are you sure you can do it? Because I don't want to come back to this discussion. We have an agreement. Do you think you can honor this? Yeah, this kind of discussions help, but you need to have this engagement, and this is what debt collection is in these days about. It's not just coming down with the force of the law and threaten people. This is not the case. I mean, you have also
That's
cowboys
last
there.
resort.
Yeah.
Often that's last resort. The going
Yes.
the legal route. Going the legal route is the surest way to ruin a customer relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is more in cases where where there is an insolvency going on, and you need to make sure you have a space on the creditor list in there to get paid at some point in time or so. But going legal as a first step is just silly. Yeah, it's just silly.
Yeah, that's the surest way to mess things up. I want to ask you, just throw a slightly different angle into it, and that is, a lot of SMEs rely heavily on doing business with larger organizations. So it's one thing to do business with, let's call it consumers, or smaller other businesses, or businesses slightly bigger than you, but they have similar, let's call it culture, if you like. Where when you're dealing with one of these monsters, I mean, I don't want to name names, but let's call it a massive retailer who starts becoming a bit, they got a procurement office. So there's no, like, you don't go and speak to the owner or to anybody. You got a procurement officer, you got the salesperson there, and then you got the procurement, and then you got to go through this vetting process, and then you go onto the vendor list, as an example, and then you now supply, and then I think this is often where like, the description on your invoice is not correct, or it's not the same purchase order number as we issued you, and therefore we're not paying you. And then you will now be in the next payment cycle, which is 60 days or whatever it is, that kind of discussion. Do you get involved with that type of thing? Because sometimes for me, there's a bit of a mismatch in terms of almost a David and Goliath in a way. But there's a mismatch sometimes between SMEs doing business for large corporations. Tell us a bit. Did you have experience in that?
Yes, I mean, I think that there are two different types of big businesses, I would think. Yeah, there's the one type, what you described. Yeah, so we have internal processes, and I mean, having been one of them, and procurement was always under me in my CFO times, for example. I know that you have, for compliance reasons, also follow certain processes. So even if you like to pay so and so limited the invoice immediately, if the invoice, if the address isn't correct, if the company name isn't correct, if the purchase order number isn't correct, if the content of the invoice is a mismatch to what you ordered, you simply can't. Yeah. So, and there is an education piece required on the small business side to understand what that is required. And then my advice would be just follow what the requirement is. So ask, when you engage with this big company, what is your payment requirement? What is your payment cycle? Is there anything I need to be aware of? Can you give me an example of a good process, good invoice or so that goes through easily? Yeah. And then you can solve these things. And I keep telling this also small businesses a lot, and say, also build this in your price calculation. Yeah, if you know that the company has a 30-day cycle, but usually you expect payment with receiving the invoice, then take the interest for 1 month into your prices and tell your customer about it and say, look, this is up for grab for you. I'm just doing it because you're out of sync with what the rest of the market is doing. Yeah. So that is the one part. The other part is the more evil part of the big companies, and unfortunately they exist as well. And they know that they have the power over the small businesses and just capitalize on it. Yeah. And I mean, there are two industries, without naming any companies, yeah, but construction is a particular problem, and the other one is the whole food and beverage part. Yeah, so where larger supermarkets, for example, have suppliers which are small farms or small companies delivering. Yeah, and there's, unfortunately, in both industries, is a massive issue at the moment where they just basically manage their own cash on the back of the small companies, and that is simply not right. Yeah. And that's why the commissioner for small offices, small businesses, has been put in place. I mean, for me, it's still a drop in the ocean because there's just a few people trying to do good things. Yeah, but it's a good signal to the market. Actually, this is not acceptable behavior. Yeah, it's the same thing what I said earlier on with the restaurant bill. Yeah, you can't just stand up and say I'm not paying. Yeah, but these guys doing this because they think they can. Yeah? And that needs changing. As from a SME point of view, I would say do only business with these people if you have to, or if you can afford to live with the problems. But don't anticipate there is no problem and do business with them and then cry later. That is not working. Yeah,
it's that thing, sort of know your client, know your customer, know who you're dealing with. Do your homework, and so on. And I think that comes back to the theme of the podcast, which is really a lot to do with marketing leadership. And it's not so much generating new customers and making new sales and all that type of thing. It's about also managing and looking after things like cash flow, your invoicing process, your customer relationship once you've invoiced them, being able to communicate properly. And I think you said something that was golden, really, and that has got a lot to do with just talking. You know, go and talk to your customers, sit down and have a conversation, and that is all part of marketing leadership, because really you want the customer to buy again from you, don't you? You want repeat business, and you want to be able to get referrals, and you want to do all these types of things. So if you're following decent marketing principles, you should have minimal collection issues. But when you do, you guys are the right guys to talk to, because you can help, again, take it to the next level in terms of helping unpack some of the systemic issues, some of the processing issues, and some of the things that you know, because this is your field. This is what you've chosen as a business. And I want to use that as a segue, because I see we're coming close to the end of the hour. And I think you were right when you said, when we first started talking, we probably need longer than an hour. But Oliver, it's been fascinating talking to you. I want you just to tell us a little bit about your company, how people can get hold of you, and sort of what are the things that you can help them with.
Yeah. So the key thing what we're doing whenever you're not able as an SME to collect your invoice yourself on time, or maybe not at all, because there are approximately £6 billion being written off by SMEs every year, and 30% of the bills on average are late. Yeah. So if you can't solve the problems yourself, then the easiest way in these days is not finding a debt collection agency, negotiate with them, and so the easiest way is what we are offering here, and this is a marketplace which is connected at the moment to the accounting package Xero. So if you're a Xero customer, then you can see us as an accounting package add on there, and we would then automatically connect with you. Then the next thing is you select yourself the invoices you want help with. So you stay totally in control of where you want help. You don't have to give us everything you have that's overdue, just the problem childs you see, or where you're not certain, or where you need the cash earlier. And you click them, and with another click, you will get offers from our business partners. And there are different partners for different problems. So some are experts in a certain industry. Sometimes they prefer disputed invoice, others prefer not to. Then there are regional differences. So you can select which one is the best fit for you. And then with another click, you basically pass the invoice to our partners, and they take care of the process. And during this process of collection, they will inform you at what stage the collection process is. So in total, we collected it because it's a bit more punchy. Yeah, with 6 clicks, you can, from selecting an invoice to instructing a debt collection agency, solve your problem for that area. Yeah.
Love it.
So that's what we do. However, I also want to stretch. We have also a corner with all the good ideas on our website where you can go through and learn from and improve your processes. Because at the end of the day, as we said earlier on in the podcast, we're not just here living on the problems. Yeah, we also want you to become better businesses. Yeah, that is an important thing to us as well, knowing that this will probably help us with our business as well. So it's, I think, a mutual thing.
Yeah.
So
and,
you find us on a company name, Dudley. The most important thing.
Tell us about the website. So tell us what the web address is and how.
It's www.BizzCtrl.com, and BizzCtrl is spelled BizzCtrl.com. Yeah.
I
And
love
that's that
that
easy.
CTRL, because that's like your keyboard, the CTRL, as in control.
I haven't thought about it. Here we go. Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, and at the time we're going live in a few weeks, but you can register with us. You can also send me personally an email. It's oliver@bizzcontrol.com. And I will respond to you and tell you what the latest is. You might also get a goodie then in terms of the top 10 ideas to prevent receivables, overdue receivables. Receivables you shouldn't prevent, but overdue receivables you should. That might help as well. Yeah.
I love it. That's great. I thank you so much, and please stay on the line. Don't go. I'm just going to say goodbye to our audience, and but that was fascinating. Thank you very much, Oliver. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
So that's another episode of our fractional sort of CMO podcast, where we talk to marketing leaders, people that are in that space. And although this is more around sort of collection of money and outstanding funds and so on, I think the marketing principles always apply. And you can really, if you are managing your business properly, putting the right systems, processes, procedures, and things in place, but also understanding the fundamentals of marketing, understanding that it's about a relationship with your customer. It's about building the communication channels that you need. And it's about making sure that you're not just delivering on your service or product or whatever it is that you sell, but doing more to build your reputation, build your ability to expand, get referrals, get more repeat business from existing customers, and so on. But if we go one level further, that if there are issues, it's better to get professionals involved, people like Oliver, BizzCtrl, where you have part of your accounting system, like you said, it's a few clicks, and you can actually get that systemized so that you're not being distracted from the real things you should be doing, getting the time to speak to your customers, getting your time to get more customers, getting the time to build referrals and further networks around your customer and client base. So if you're in an SME environment or even in a larger business, the customer relationship and the relationship-based engagement with clients and customers it's critical to your business. And even though we're talking debt collection, we're talking money and getting the money, if you've done all the stuff properly right up until the invoice, you've delivered the invoice with an explanation, and then if there are any issues that you're dealing with them long before you go down the legal or all the uncomfortable, unnecessary things that literally ruin your business long term. So I want to say thank you to Oliver, and I want to thank you to as an audience. Hopefully this was of value, and I think it was massively valuable, because I think we need to be reminded that there are ways of dealing with things and that are better than potentially that has been done over the last 15, 20, 25 years. And that whole thing about behavior, and I love that word that Oliver uses, it's the behavior. It's the behavior of your clients, you, and obviously your employees, and any systems and processes that you put in place. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you join us on the next episode of our fractional CMO Marketing Leadership podcast. See you next time. Have a super week.